G'day, mate, and welcome to Friday Facts 361. They're back. They're back with train stop limits, tips and tricks, and a mojo. How you doing, mate?
Hello.
Long time no chat.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had one of these.
Yeah,
Almost,
2
what,
months?
3 months?
3 months? Woob's been quiet, like super quiet. Our seating did do a Ask Me Anything on Reddit, which blew up, honestly. And we were doing the alternate Friday Facts, which of course started the week after the Friday Facts, and I think we both just ran out of time, honestly.
Yeah.
And
They weren't quite the same.
no, they weren't quite the same.
I like the traditional original clone and special.
Well, yeah, Clonin still works on these. No, actually, it must have been 7 weeks because we have 7 weeks of alternate Friday Facts. There you go. Yeah, the Friday Facts... Oh, I pressed the wrong button. There we go. So yeah, the alternative Friday Facts are direct from... Or the real Friday Facts are straight from the devs. The alternative Friday Facts, we've got 7 weeks worth, and they've been... not quite the same flavour. But yeah, for the real Friday Facts, let's cover 1.1, the real 1.0. Because they got a little bit rushed coming into the end. Although they did throw in a Spidertron at last minute.
Not everything was quite squared off properly.
Yeah. So the point of 1.1 isn't to add some new content. The main motivation is to finalize all the existing features so they work together in a proper way. And Clennon says, believe me, the sentence, I didn't know I needed this until now, will come up in your mind more than once. The work on 1.1 started basically right after the 1.0 release, so there's already lots to show. And we're going to jump straight in the train stop limit. So we have Boss Kid here, who's one of their new hires. Yes, I think he was the last one.
Yeah, he's one of the more recent ones. It's been around for a while now. His big claim to fame was the pipe restrictions, or breaking them.
Breaking everything. He was really good. He was brought in originally as a quality assurance because he broke everything. And then he's got a bit of programming behind him. So he's been doing this and that around the place, updating things. He's done a few things. I think he helped on the fluids and then did 1 or 2 other projects. And then, of course, has now gone across the train. So the problem. So imagine the situation. You're sitting in a factory, you need more iron. Of course. So you build a nice railway to bring ore from a dedicated mining outpost back to your iron smelter. You build 2 ore outposts. You set up 2 trains, 1 for each. 2 trains have a similar schedule. One goes from iron smelting 1 to iron ore 1. The other goes to iron ore 2. This works fine. However, there's some problems if you want to expand your production. You just copy and paste iron smelter 1 and have half the ore to go to iron smelter 2. Now you need to start manually reassigning trains, trying to balance the throughput of your mines. What else? If an iron mine runs dry, you need to rebalance the whole system, redesign all the trains from the stations, have some sort of omniscient overview of all the different routes. Your trains are running with more mines, more smelters, more trains. The management becomes an incalculable problem, and frankly, it's not fun. We've both been there, haven't we, Mojo?
Yep. As soon as you have a second smelter, the balancing becomes a significant problem.
Yes, and this is why traditionally you'd end up with one giant smelter.
Because it's a lot easier logistically to pull everything from many destinations to a single point and then distribute them back out to many destinations.
Yeah. It just meant that often you needed one giant stacker, and also not so much in the later versions of Factorio, but definitely in the earlier versions. I remember in 15 spending 2 months fighting with the smelter to have all the trains come in and path nice and gently and evenly out to all the different rows for smelters for all the different trains, because they didn't want to. They wanted to path to wherever was closest, even if that train station was full. They didn't care. We have had more signal options and more things added since, which makes life easier, but it's still less than a perfect situation. So
it's not ideal.
Yeah. So there is a nice solution that works almost, and there's name all the ore stations the same, all the smelting stations the same, and then when choosing destination, the train go any of the train stops with that name, which means when you build a new ore outpost, you just name it Iron Mine, and train will come and pick up from it. Correct. When you build a new iron smelting, just name it Iron Smelter, and train will come deliver some ore. Correct. When you build a new train, you just copy and paste a simple schedule and start working effectively. Mostly correct.
Mostly.
However, there's a small issue with the system that completely breaks the idea. Train's not clever. They will path to the closest train stop no matter what. And this can be fixed by using wires to signal to turn stations on and off. So, like, if you have enough ore in there for a train to come pick up, a train is allowed to come pick up. But then when that train picks up, the station gets turned off, and hopefully other trains are smart and they repath, but they don't always, and you end up having a little bit of a mess.
Or you encourage them to go somewhere else with, starting with 4 signals, then 8, then anywhere from 16 to 20 plus signals all chained together and turned off with the circuit network to discourage them and shoo them off to a different outpost.
Yeah, see, Mojo's gone deep into this.
I've done that.
He's done this with multiple signals, and also train stations had a higher pathing penalty originally.
Yeah, the size of an integer -1.
Yeah, so end up. I remember seeing his outpost with like 5 train stations before the actual one that loads the ore, for no other reason but to hopefully make sure that the trains want to go elsewhere rather than this particular stop.
Oh yeah, that was after the penalty was changed. The size of integer -1 was that was the 15. That was the one that caused the problem where they would always go to the closest, because the path penalty would overflow because it was the size of integer -1.
Yeah.
So as soon as you add 1 to it, it's 0 again.
Yeah, it was. Trains have been a nightmare for some time. At least when you get to the bigger scale.
Oh yeah.
So they've added a new little tick box, which will hopefully fix the problems. In saying that, we'll get to some more details shortly. It's pretty simple as good solutions typically are. You can set a train limit in the train stop GUI, and then train stop keeps track of how many trains are in the station or on their way to the station, which we call a reservation. When a train is choosing its next destination, it will check the limit of all the stops with that name. If a train stop has too many reservations already, it'll skip over it. If all the potential train stops are full, the train will just wait. So if you have 5 iron outposts, all called iron, and then you set up each one of them with a train limit of 2 and have 10 trains out there, in theory they'll path 2 per station. So as long as you have enough room on your lead out from the main line, your stacker, to fit 2 trains, everything should work peachy, perfectly, work 100%, great.
Certainly an interesting idea.
It's an interesting idea, and both me and Mojo were chatting beforehand, and we can see some potential problems, but we'll get to those shortly. So, the train limit also controllable with circuit networks. There are even more possibilities. One idea is keeping the train limit set to 0 until there's a full load of ore available at station. You can also read the current number of reservations, which has its own interesting uses. They do cover an edge case, so we're also working on the feature. What happens if the limit is lowered whilst the train is already on its way? Our first idea was force all the trains are on their way to repath and find a new destination. But if the train has nowhere it can path to, it would end up stopping in the middle of the tracks, which leads to the good old, we've both encountered with trash trains, where a train is on its way, it's going full spelt, and then the trash system gets turned off, and you end up with the train just sits there going no path, and I'm not moving because I got no way to turn around.
And it always has just barely turned onto that final path where at the point of no return. When it turns off too. Every time.
So this is why a lot of these stations that now people turn on and off generally happen to be loop stations. So the train, even if it's turned off, it can go, okay, I can't go to that station, but I can drive through that station and flip around and go back onto the main line.
And then find the next one.
And probably do the exact same thing, because trash trains are like that. So we decided, they have decided even the train limit is, the limit is changed, the train with a reservation will still go there. So we have some questions about what happens then.
Yeah, I want to see what happens. So if the limit is changed to 0 and the train's there, so it'll still go there. What happens when it gets there? Will it sit there forever, or will it get there, realize that it's the destination is still 0 and then go somewhere else? Or will it get there and will it drive straight through it like a path, like a waypoint station? Will it get there and do its orders? So, like, wait for 30 seconds of inactivity, which is what most trash trains do. So I hope it doesn't do that, because that kind of defeats the purpose of the system.
Well, what, the pathfinding, the waypoint route where it just drives straight through?
No, the second option. I could appreciate that. I could get along with the second option where it gets there and then says, okay, my destination now has 0. I'm going to find a new one and then takes off again.
Yeah.
The second option where it just completes its orders anyway means that it's just completely ignored the limit.
Yes. Yes.
And this is going to need some testing, I think.
It's going to need some testing, and it might need some tweaks unless the devs have thought about all the different edge cases and places where it's used. So yeah. On top of that, they had to deal with the no path warnings. So if all train stops were full to their limit, the train would show no path, which isn't very intuitive for new players. So where a train can't find a path due to the train limit, it will show a special warning destination full. Which also brings up my question is if you happen to have 10 trains going to 5 different outposts all doing iron ore, and then you rip up one train station, you're going to have 10 trains, 8 possible stops. What do those other 2 trains do?
Yeah, that brings up another question.
Are they going to no path? Because technically all their destinations are full in every single one of them. But so are they going to no path, or are they going to destination full and park on the main line anyway? Or are they going to go, okay, well, I can't go anywhere, so I'm going to go back to the smelter and empty my non-existing ore and then sit in the smelter and go no path? I don't know.
Oh, here's a better one. What if if all of the stops have their limits reached and they're still unloading and then they finish unloading? Will they sit at the unload? Because there's no more destinations.
I don't know.
That's another interesting one.
It might be a case of like you need to go smelter, unload, waypoint stacker, mainline outpost, pick up ore, new waypoint stacker towards the smelter, so it can go back to the smelter and then go out to the next waypoint. Because as long as it can get to a waypoint, it can park in a stacker until an outpost opens up or to a smelting lane opens up, you know. That might be the new answer. That might be the new norm when it comes to trains. Because we've both done this. We've both done like lots of different signals to try and force trains to do this way or that way, or add penalties so they use, you know, all the different options when it comes to a smelter or outpost. And trains are a little bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, they are.
Yep. So
I'm either way. I'm interested to see what's going to happen.
I am too. Because yeah, they do say like here to the outside observer, this may really seem like a tiny little thing, but for us is one of the most exciting features of 1.1. I think it's also quite telling that something like this has been missing for a long time, given the popularity of. They mentioned here the logistics train network mod, which uses thousands of combinators to get your trains to work. I wouldn't say a lot smarter. I'd just say a little bit smarter.
Thousands and thousands of combinators to make a system that's questionable potentially.
Yeah,
questionably better.
There's 3 main ones that I can think of. There's the logistics train network, which is probably one of the oldest and probably the most well known. And then there's the train supply manager, which is the one I prefer.
It was made for. We prefer it because it was made specifically for megabases.
It was made specifically for megabases. It's also made with GUI. So rather than having lots of combinators you got to set up properly, you have a GUI that you can access anywhere in your base, and you can do a lot of the changes in the GUI without having to drive to your far distant iron outpost number 25 to go change a combinator setting and then come all the way back. Now, I know you can copy paste combinators now and update them remotely to a certain extent, but you know, if something doesn't work, you're probably going to have to drive out to look at which wire you missed placing in the LTN. And then there is...
Or you had a blueprint error and it lost a wire or a combinator setting, which does happen surprisingly frequently.
That still happens. And then you have HTN, which is done by Herpolis, one of our streaming buddies, and it is in vanilla. But again, it's all wires, it's all combinators, and same story. It works most of the time. You do have wires get missed, combinator settings get missed, other things get missed, and everything goes wrong if you happen to mix up your wire signals. So, yeah, this sort of implementation in vanilla, I have no idea what it's going to change.
I think it could add some interesting new potential for outposts.
Yeah.
Again, we need to do the testing to see about all these edge cases we're dreaming up, because they may have already thought of them.
They may have already thought of them. Like I tried to get hold of Lord Couture so he could join us on this particular Friday Facts, because it's right up his alley, and unfortunately he couldn't make it in this afternoon. But yeah, I think Because they have mentioned you can read them and send details on the circuit network in vanilla, I think Apollo's train network or the HTN will take good advantage of it. Lord Couture's system, I'm willing to bet through the GUI will take some sort of advantage of it. The LTN network, I have no idea. I imagine it will try and take some sort of advantage of it as well.
Yeah, it would simplify LTN, I imagine. TSM, it probably won't affect it all because TSM automatically handles it anyway.
It does. TSM, you can set it up to say, hey, you can already set it up to say, hey, I only want 3 trains coming to the station at any one time, and it's just built straight in the mod. And it'll only send 3 trains at any one time. So
probably going to simplify that even further from what it already is.
Yeah, that's what I was saying in Discord earlier. Literally, you could that part of the mod, which I often ignore, you could just now ignore it completely and just set a little tick box on the train station. So yeah, there's lots of different options. So yeah, we're gonna wait for 1.1 for this. When that is, according to the guessing of the Friday Facts, they do mention they're going to we're going to have a couple more Friday Facts before we see 1.1. So we're guessing next month or the month after.
Yeah, they said right at the top they're more than halfway through, which means it's been 2 months since 1.0.
Yeah,
so it's 1 to 2 months away, I imagine.
Yeah. They did explaining more clearly in the upcoming Friday Facts. So there's at least 2 more Friday Facts to come, and they haven't been weekly anymore, so we'll see what happens. So next one is tips and tricks. So the tips and tricks have been a feature in the game for a very long time. It became as a way to explain things to players, which were not explained anywhere else. The iconic example is the alt mode tip. Playing with alt mode is painful and even more painful to watch, so we had to tell players somehow. In saying that, I've actually had a couple of people on my Discord start setting the challenge of playing the game without alt mode, and it's a very different way to play.
It's unique.
It's unique, and it means you need to really, really know how your factory works. Future challenge: if you think you've done everything in Factorio, go back to the start, turn off alt mode, and never turn it back on. So in the early days, I mean the really early days, but even before the Indiegogo campaign, the first implementation was straightforward but a bit rough. So the initial design, they would pop up, start the game. You can click forward, but you can't click back. You can close the GUI. What?
Naturally, you could only go forward.
Funnily enough, I remember the only going forward part.
It was around for long enough.
Yeah, they added the going back in like 16 something, and I didn't even realize that the button was there.
Well, I mean, if you're anything like me, since version 12 when I started, the first thing I did was tick don't show again and close. I've never read any of them.
Funnily enough, I never ticked that, and because I keep doing new installs all the time, it'd pop up religiously. I've seen every single tip and trick there is, because every single time I do a new install, it's on by default, and I just never click the don't show. I'm like, no, that's fine. You can sit there and you can pop up next time, just in case there's something new I might learn. Not really, but that's okay. So yeah, they say the images were inconsistent size, the GUI jump around and resize. I remember that too. And there was a built-in checkbox to turn them off. So the first refresh happened in... it doesn't say. Oh yeah, there we go. 1651 is the GUI picture, but I think it happens somewhere in 16. So you can
somewhere around there.
Yeah, so you can click forward and backward. You can close and open them with a hotkey. That was already there, wasn't there? No. You had to go into the options and re-enable them from memory.
Yeah, you had to go back into options.
Yeah. The images were retaken at a consistent zoom resolution and zoom. That makes such a difference.
Oh yeah, the pictures were so wonky in the old days.
And you can open them in multiplayer. So yeah, that was really where they got to with 16 and the tips and tricks. And then because they're having the mini tutorials, which they started working on, and the new player experience campaign was going to be such the thing for Factorio 1.0, they stopped doing anything about it. And then the mini tutorials never really went anywhere, and the new player experience campaign thing got cancelled. So, yep. So at 1.0, they took one quick look at the tips and tricks. Tips are one of the first GUI the player sees when they start free to play, so I want to give them a last look of paint before the full release. And they did look a lot better.
They looked so much nicer as a 1.0.
So the improvement this time was a nice finishing touch to bring the tips and tricks to their final form, increased the image size and updated all the images to be high res, added frames and subpanels to match the visual style of the new GUI, new button styles, generic close button in the top right. So that was it. They could lay it to rest and, watch the sunrise in a graceful universe. Mostly, I would call the tips and tricks done at that point. I don't really think it needed any more work in its current intention. It was intended to be tips and tricks, and it was working great. But they did have a little bit of inspiration for change. So in the mod Factorio 2, which is like a complete overhaul mod, and also in the information mod, which is part of space exploration, which is another like total conversion mod, people went to work. And Factorio 2 has a mini wiki, which is very, very helpful for that mod pack, I'd say. And the information or Tron mod is helpful in what it handles for space exploration. It doesn't really go anything above and beyond that. But yeah, both these were great inspirations, and they've decided to put a little bit more work in the tips and tricks, I think is probably the best way of putting it. So, new tips and tricks are pictures worth 1,000 words. So, they've actually changed it over, and they've got like a mini wiki inside the game. And I'm trying to think, Mojo, help me out here. What other games have a wiki built into them? It's like City Skylines? No.
I'm blank at the minute. I've seen them before.
Look, there's half a dozen really good games that have built into them their own internal wiki.
Oh, of course, Civilization series. They have an entire encyclopedia.
Yeah, the Civ Encyclopedia. That's the one I was thinking of. So yeah, there are half a dozen really good games that have really, really, really good wikis built into the game. And that's sort of the avenue they're going. They're not covering everything like the Factorio wiki, which is actually a really, really great and powerful resource, does, but they are ticking off a certain amount of things off the list. So they've added an index to the side. Now there's an index. We can remove the forward and back buttons, which is great. There's a search button, so we can search using the tip titles. I really hope the search is a fuzzy search, so it'll also search anything they've got in the description underneath the picture.
Yeah, that would make searching a lot nicer. Yeah. The tips categorized and indented accordingly. There is a mark as red button, but they'll get back to that in a second. And that's really it. Hang on. That was the other thing. The problem is the tips are still using images, which means they become outdated as we update things. We've retaken all the screenshots many times over the years. So what can they do about it? They can make them GIFs, right? GIFs would be great. That way they can retake the GIFs each time they update the graphics in the game engine, which sounds painful. Or they can update them to MP4s, but they actually went for one step above that. And what you're actually doing is, in the tips and tricks, it's showing a simulation of Factorio in the tips and tricks. I mean, you can make the engine do it, so why not do it?
Yeah, pretty much. It means when you're putting down furnaces, if you change the graphic in furnaces, or the graphic of furnaces, or if you use a mod that changes stone furnaces to use a different image, then magically it works. I do have a question. What happens if, like, we're playing Factorio 2 at the moment, where...
Oh, in that case, it wouldn't work.
Well, furnaces still exist, but they look like a furnace, but they act like a assembly machine, so you have to set the recipe. So, I have no idea what happens there. Maybe the tips and tricks GUI just blows up and the whole game crashes. I don't know. Do
you know what actually opens up?
What?
Putting a mega base in the tips and tricks.
There's nothing to stop you, technically.
Nah, it depends. Yeah, it just depends on how big the actual the game world within the window is.
It's all put in by Lua script, so you'd be. I think you'd be building it. I think you'd be building it very, very quickly in Lua script.
Scripting the entire base.
A mega base. Yeah.
Actually, I think there is a tool to capture.
In the game
there's a game tool that lets you capture entities and turn it into Lua.
In the game editor, you can copy a whole base and the terrain and the ore and everything and make a Lua blueprint. It's not a blueprint, it's a Lua blueprint, but yes, you can, Mojo. So there you go.
Ah, there you go. It's in the editor.
Yep, first version for 1.1 when that comes out. Mojo's going to have a job. He's gonna make sure that the the alternate info, the alt mode comes up and it just loads up a whole megabase in front of you with the alt mode off just to frustrate you. Anyway, so yeah, it's a big change. Now, again, it's not really going to affect a lot of experienced players. Newer players, and we still have new players showing up all the time. I have new players dropping in my Twitch stream and on my YouTube videos like every day, every week. So it is really going to help new players. It's one of those things that they should have really maybe had win 1.0. But yes, so the other problem they have is the unifying with the mini tutorials. So we already have the mini tutorials up in the top right hand corner, which would be a little bit outdated by this. So it's a weird and awkward situation. Some things are explained in the tips GUI and other things are in the mini tutorials. So as far as I read this, they're combining the functionality of the two systems. Mini tutorials will still be the same, but they're presented inside a tip, and we hook in the suggestion and dependency system for the tips. We added a markers red button as well now, so you can actually go through the tips and mark them off one at a time, which again is just a great simple feature. And I think the right-hand button up above your minimap that shows the tutorials will probably show the tips and tricks now instead. They didn't really tell it, say, one way or another. They did say, yeah, it means the tips and tricks GUI starts only with the necessary tips, and you progress through the game. Relevant tips are unlocked and shown to you. Very similar way the game starts with only a few recipes, and the more complex aspects are unlocked unlocked over time. So I'm assuming that, yeah, the top right-hand corner where the tutorials button will be replaced with the tips and tricks / tutorials / helpful guides / whatever button.
Game mini wiki thing.
Yeah, mini wiki thing. So they all also have added that the tips are moddable. So it's only natural with the update and the modernization of tips we open the system up to modders, because before that it was a specific JSON file in the core data directory, which means it could be modded, but you had to hard code the modding data and then have players replace that JSON file rather than it being included in a nice pretty mod that you could download off the mod portal. So yeah, it means that modders can now directly go on the tips and tricks, which means the Crastorio 2.1, wherever that is, can probably be just put straight in the game tips and tricks thingamajiggy bob, along with the information mod as well. And again, I really wonder how all these different things are going to work together, but that sounds like a modder problem and not a JD problem. So yeah, they do mention the scope of tips. What we want is for tips and tricks to explain mechanics and topics that are more complex or hard to explain somewhere else. With that in mind, we decided on a few loose categories. Things that are not related to some specific system, e.g. alt info, ghost building. When visual presentation helps a lot, e.g. splitters, filter splitters, belt lanes, longhand inserters, that sort of stuff. When something is related to a combination of more items, e.g. gates over rails, copy paste stuff, and the tricks tab being lab to lab movement, stack transfers, and drag building. So if you have any suggestions, go to the forums, go to Reddit, either or. The devs are actually really active on both Reddit and the forums, and leave your suggestions for what should be covered in the tips and tricks. I think me and Mojo are both at the point, like, I can't think of anything.
Yeah, it's pretty well comprehensively covered everything that I can think of.
Copy and paste assemblers. That's one question I get a lot. Yeah, copy and pasting recipes from assemblers. That's probably the only thing that I'm guessing is not covered in the tips and tricks currently that people ask me about often. Apart from that...
there's a few things, something recently. I can't think what it is now.
Devs, if you're watching, go over to Twitch, dead set, sit through any stream. Any player playing Factorio, especially if they've been doing it for a while, and they're happy to answer questions that chat has. So probably not the speedrunners, unfortunately. They're just too busy to answer questions from new players. But most of the streamers sit there for a stream. Questions will come up, like, constantly. I probably get 1 or 2 questions probably every hour, and I just answer them off the cuff. I don't even have to think about them. Well, 9 times I have to think about, is it shift, left, or right click to copy and paste recipes? Because it's all muscle memory now, and I just can't remember. So I have to specifically slow down and do it.
I'm just driving me insane now. There was something really basic that someone was like mind blown on, and I just can't remember what it is.
I saw mind blown that exoskeleton stack today. Somebody didn't realize that in a comment.
I mean, it's a simple one, but no one told them that you could do it.
Yeah, it's one of those things you only find out by doing it.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting paradigm. Is that like the reason we know is because we assumed there was no limit, so we put more in.
Turns out there is a limit. It happens when you start phasing through buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is an upper limit of how fast you can run, and it starts with phasing through 1 tile walls, then 2 tile walls, then 3 tile assemblers, then 4 tile roboports, and yes, if you run fast enough, you can phase through just about anything, including rocket silos.
You can also jump lakes with it.
I haven't got that fast.
So there is a console command for character running speed modifier. If you set that to a large enough number.
Yeah. Without using console commands, just using modern Factorio stuff, running on very, very fast concrete with many legs, I haven't got to the point where I can phase over a lake yet. But that does bring the question, has anybody tried that with a Spidertron and got it to phase over a lake? Because there's some modded Spidertrons out there with some very, very, very big equipment grids.
Yeah.
So, I think that covers it for this Friday Facts. It's another, actually, it's way shorter than I thought it was, but it's interesting. It's good that it's back. I have missed the Friday Facts so much. I have no idea when the next one's popping up. And look, the devs are really happy with these tiny little changes. The tips and tricks GUI was always one of those paradoxical systems. It was both extremely useful and terribly inefficient at the same time. Yes. And yeah, they're happy they've... We hope all the effort we've channeled into it will help. I'm assuming it will. It's just, again, one of those things that should have been done for 1.0. I think the push forward was a mistake. Well, we all know it was a mistake now that... What is it? Cyberpunk got pushed back?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's it for this Friday Facts. I guess we're going to be sitting around waiting for the next Friday Facts to drop, so me and Mojo can get together again and do this podcast style Friday Facts with you. But with all that said, I think that's everything. Yes, no?
That's everything.
Okay. Thank you guys for watching.
There's only three topics, but they were long topics.
They were long topics. Long topics with plenty of pictures. So with all that said, thank you guys for watching. Do hope you've enjoyed. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.